The Netcode plugin is a useful tool for plugin developers and workshop map makers to replicate custom events between the host and clients in custom LAN matches. It allows two-way communication, meaning the host can send custom messages to clients, and the clients can send custom messages to the host. Installing and running the plugin is very easy. In-game, open the BakkesMod settings menu, navigate to the plugin manager, and choose Install by ID 166. If you're making a multiplayer workshop map with this plugin, make sure everyone does this installation themselves. If you're making a multiplayer plugin, the Netcode Manager class will handle the NetcodePlugin installation automatically for anyone using your plugin. More details about that in the plugin development section of this tutorial. This plugin piggybacks off of the in-game chat system to send invisible text strings. Any message that is sent by either the host or a client will be automatically replicated to every other client. Because this plugin utilizes the chat system, all players in the LAN match must have chat set to Allow All and should not have any of the other players muted. Another very important note, messages are limited to 128 characters total. The chat system will only send the first 128 characters of any message, so you'll miss out on data if your message is bigger than that. Plugins and workshop maps have different specifics about their character usage, which will be explained in their respective sections of this tutorial. Please pay special attention to those parts. For debugging both workshop maps and plugins, NetcodePlugin, and Netcode Manager for plugin developers, comes with a netcode log level cvar that you can set to display varying levels of logging. The values range from 0 to disable logging, up through 3 for the most logging. That's all for the intro. If you're interested in using this for plugin development, that's the next section of this tutorial, so hold on for just a second. If you're interested in using this for workshop maps, skip to this timestamp. Utilizing the Netcode plugin is pretty simple for plugin developers. First, you will need to pull the Netcode Manager class from this repository and add it to your project's directory. There will be a link to the repository in the description. Make sure you include the files in your Visual Studio project and add include netcodemanager.h to your plugin's header file. Also, make sure you set the C++ language standard to C++17. Next, you should create a shared pointer to store the Netcode Manager. Netcode Manager does not have a default constructor, so you will need to construct it in the onload function. To construct it, pass in the cvar manager, game wrapper, exports, and a message receiving handler, which I will explain next. cvar manager, game wrapper, and exports are all part of the plugin by default, so you can just pass those in as is. The message receiving handler has a specific signature, return type of void with 2 parameters, a const standard string reference for the message, and a pry wrapper for the sender. So here I will create a function with that signature and call it onMessageReceived. Then I'll pass that into the Netcode Manager constructor using standard bind with 2 placeholders at the end which will receive the parameters from a new message. I'll include using namespace standard placeholders here to help keep the code clean. When the Netcode Manager is constructed, it will automatically check for the NetcodePlugin DLL and load or install it from Bakkes plugins if it can't find the file. If NetcodePlugin can't load for whatever reason, Netcode Manager will disable itself and report errors based on your log level. This means you don't need to tell people to install both your plugin and Netcode plugin. Sending a message is very easy, but has some specifics that you need to watch out for. It's as simple as netcode send message along with the message. However, as I stated in the intro, the message is limited to 128 characters total. This means your message itself cannot be 128 characters. In order for NetcodePlugin communication to work, there's some necessary formatting that is automatically added to your message. For illustration purposes, this example only shows 32 characters. Every message that you send through the Netcode Manager will include 6 characters plus the length of your plugin's class name. The PCPH header is information that is internal to NetcodePlugin, and the plugin class tells receivers of the message whether the message is intended for your plugin or for a different plugin. All of this is automatically handled inside either the Netcode plugin or the Netcode Manager. This leaves all the remaining characters available for a message. A smaller plugin class name means you'll be able to fit more characters into your message. Receiving a message is easy too. Whenever an incoming message is received, the message receiving handler will give you the content of the message and the pry wrapper of the sender. Make sure you null check the sender's pry before you use it. It shouldn't be null, but you never know. From there, do whatever parsing you want to figure out what the message's instructions are. In the full Netcode Manager example plugin, also linked in the description, a player will send a message saying, "Give me the ball." When the host and the other clients receive that message, they know which car to teleport the ball to because they were able to get it from the sender's pry. That's all for the plugin development section of this tutorial. Next up is the workshop maps section. Utilizing the Netcode plugin for workshop maps, in its most basic form, is pretty easy. The plugin relies on Activate Remote Event and Remote Event nodes to do its communication. An important thing to note before diving in, do not include the vertical line character in any of the event names, parameter names, or parameter values. This will break NetcodePlugin's message parser. I'll explain that a little bit more later on. Here is the most basic form of the kismet required for communication through NetcodePlugin. When you want to communicate something to other players, add an Activate Remote Event to the end of the chain. The event name parameter must begin with WSNC_. This prefix tells the plugin that this event should be replicated. If it doesn't begin with that prefix, the plugin will ignore it. You should also include a remote event with the same event name. When a client triggers the Activate Remote Event node, it will automatically trigger its own remote event node. That's how Kismet works normally. However, with NetcodePlugin, it will also send the same message to all the other clients telling them to trigger their own remote events. You can also send custom parameters in your message, but this is where things get a little bit more complicated. To add a parameter to the message, add a setString node after the Activate Remote Event node. The target variable must have a string_var node with a name that begins with WSNC_out. The value variable should be whatever string you wish to pass in as the variable's value. Next, add a matching setString node after the remote event. The target variable should be a string_var with a name that matches the parameter's name, but with the WSNC_in prefix instead of the WSNC_out prefix. The following steps are crucial for NetcodePlugin to function correctly. The value variable must be empty. Don't put any node in there. Next, you must have a compareString node to compare the string against an empty string. If the string is not empty, you can continue the chain of execution. From this point on, you can use the string_var nodes normally. They will contain the value that was placed into the corresponding out parameter up above. If you want to add another parameter, just duplicate the same thing. You'll only need one null string check in the chain. You can add as many parameters as you want, as long as the total message length does not exceed 128 characters. The message itself can't be 128 characters because NetcodePlugin adds some necessary formatting so that its parser will work. Every message is guaranteed to have 4 spaces taken up by WC or WH inside brackets. This is information that is handled internally by NetcodePlugin to determine replication of the message. Every parameter that you pass in will include 2 vertical line characters as separators. The first vertical line separates the parameter grouping from either the event name or the previous parameter, and the second vertical line separates the parameter's name from its value. With that formatting in mind, this is the final format of a message. The replication status, followed by the event name, followed by the list of parameters and their values. Notice how the prefixes have been removed from the event name and the parameter names. The plugin will automatically remove the prefixes to save character space in the message, and will add the prefixes back in when searching for matching nodes. That is why the prefixes are mandatory for the plugin to work. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I'm excited to see all the maps and plugins that people will develop using this plugin. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the programming channel of the BakkesMod Discord server. That server will be linked in the description.